Woo. Okay, hi, say hi, we're testing here. All right, I guess I have to turn it around, right? Brianna, you can tell me.
Yep.
You can tell me if, here, you can use that. You can tell me if this thing's working or not. You can
Yep.
see me.
Yep.
How are we doing? Do I need to squat? I don't need
Nope.
to squat down.
No, you're good.
No, it's on.
Yeah,
Put it on the other side.
Can you see my shoes? I got, you know where I got the idea for these shoes from is
Yeah.
our fashion icon,
Yeah.
Nick here. Yeah, you bet you know.
perfect.
Cool.
He really is. I mean, there's no doubt about it, right? He is. No doubt about it. Best, you
A
know.
word from our sponsor.
A word from our Nick's like, get on with it, man. All right, thanks. Michael, thanks for having me. This is great. We should be doing things. I know we're making a conscious effort to do more and more of this type of work, but I'm glad everybody's here. And I know some of you came into town, and half the group is looks very familiar to me because it's from my own team and Jen on the phone. So. You know, great to be a part of this. So thank you. A little bit about me and my background. I grew up not too far from here, really halfway between St. Louis and Chicago, in a town called Decatur. I went to school not far away from there, 45 minutes. I did my MBA at Auburn a little bit later in life. That was just a little bit over a decade ago. So I spent time down there and time working and all kinds of busyness. It was an interesting time in life to do it, but certainly glad I did. Made a lot of great friends and connections through that. You know, it was a real important part of my life. I do like the Chicago pro teams. We got through that. I know my first days here, getting that out on the table. You know, just the way it is. Janine and I have a little fun with that as we go along, but certainly appreciate St. Louis's sports culture. Love all college sports. I just recently moved from the suburbs to the city here, to the Hill. So I heard folks talk about Italian food over here a little earlier. Were you sharing that, Steve, with some of our visitors? Yeah, if you want the good stuff, that's where you go. It's not like going to Sbarro in the mall. This is the real deal. Play a lot of golf, or at least I tried to. I sure played a hell of a lot during the COVID year a year ago. I didn't play a whole lot this summer, but just because I'm wearing a Ryder Cup vest doesn't mean I'm any damn good, because I'm not, but I sure enjoy being out there and playing. And you'll hear me reference pop culture and a lot of dumb things, and appreciate good music. So that's kind of things that I'm interested in. In a few days, I'm heading south to my happy place. Captiva Island, Florida. I've been going there since I was a kid. I lost my dad when he was right around my age, actually, and his dream was to buy a place there, and he never got that chance. And it's kind of an honor to him, basically, to be able to go there and have a place there. And then I've got something up here called my why, and you're probably, why does he have a why? Have any of you heard of Simon Sinek? That name ring a bell? Tracy?
See him in person. Yeah,
You see him in person? Yeah. So he's a big TED talker. If you go look for him on YouTube, he's all over the place. He's a leadership consultant, and pretty dynamic one. Has a really good way with words and simplifying and breaking things down. But his theory is we all have a why, we all have a purpose, and you can see what I got up there for my purpose. I don't know exactly when you find your purpose either. I wouldn't expect folks younger in their career, early in their career, to really understand what their purpose is necessarily. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes these things take a while to evolve, and we were talking about aha moments, and sometimes you have it, and that's what sticks with you, and that's where you run from there. And what you're going to talk a lot about in these sessions is getting work done through others. But to get work done through others, you have to inspire others to get work done through others. And what I've always believed is in inspiring people to achieve beyond what they think is possible. So there'll be a little more on that as we go along here. I talked about music. I just always have to put this in here because it's colorful and fun. And I think I've seen just about all these groups in person. There's a picture of Sammy Hagar in there. I've met him on several occasions through some charity work. Great guy. I know he's big here in St. Louis too, so he likes coming here. But it's been a few years. We're not quite on Christmas card list, but you know, I think you would recognize me if we ever met up in person again. So there's Engelbert Humperdinck up there. If you wonder who that guy is, he is the ultimate crooner. So you have to be of a certain age to get that. My grandma liked him, so that gives you a sense of his genre. A little bit about my personal life here. The three girls in my life. You know, this holds a little bit more of a special place in my heart, especially this year. A few of you may know this, but I presume most of you don't, because I don't talk a whole lot about personal things. But I'm actually in the process of finalizing a divorce right now, so you hold these relationships with your family a little bit closer, and they're a little bit more meaningful. I've got one daughter, Caroline, who lives in South Carolina. She just graduated from veterinary school, and she's working in South Carolina right now at a horse clinic. I don't think you want to know what she's holding in her hands right there. She did something really bad to a horse, but that's part of the job, right? The look on your face, Renee, is just you know.
She is really happy.
She is a little too happy. I agree. A little too happy. Yeah, and that's her personality. So. My other daughter, Anna, the apple of my eye, she's a teacher in Nashville. She teaches middle school English. You talk about a calling. I mean, that's tough, but as I mentioned, she's about 2/3 of the way through her master's program in organizational leadership. She went to Pepperdine out on the West Coast. That was a great place to visit a college student. If you ever get a chance to visit Malibu, California, I highly recommend it for many reasons. And then my other girl's my good girl, and she's here with me. I brought her into the office a few times during COVID and let her, or when I guess it's still during COVID, but when the office was shut down, and let her run in here. And I think I'm the reason there's a no dogs rule in St. Louis. Let her run. Remember us having her in here, Steve? Yeah.
It was fun.
It was fun. Well, it lasted. Yeah.
You gotta warn a guy though when the dog comes loose.
It's true.
All right under your desk.
Yeah. So the career journey. It's best to show it on a map. There's a lot going on here, but been in a lot of places. But it's interesting. I've worked in the same time zone my whole career, Central Time Zone. So. Started off as a commodities trader with the Pillsbury Company, and you know, Pillsbury was an actual company back in 1988. It's been split off into 1,000 pieces and became the name stayed as a brand under General Mills now, I believe. But started as a commodities trader, traded cottonseed products. Started in Minneapolis, actually. Traded cottonseed products down in Memphis. Went to work for ConAgra while I was there, and remained a commodities trader all the way through my time in Omaha, which was in the mid '90s. So ConAgra went through a lot of change. You know, I went from being on the agricultural end, the front end, you know, the upstream end, if we would say. But ConAgra also had, you know, was emerging as a food company too, and that was the direction that the company wanted to go. So the upstream stuff started to get splintered off, and you know, I stuck around with the company and evolved with it. So I like to say that I went along with the food chain when my first jobs were about buying and selling animal feed. You know, it's real impressive when you go into a bar and you tell people that you sell cow food. That really gets them going. You know, moved from animal food into human food. As I moved toward Wisconsin, toward the Milwaukee area with the Beatrice Cheese Company, which was part of ConAgra. That's where I began to evolve from what I would say was an individual contributor to being more of a manager, more of a leader. These were pretty complex businesses, so I was moved into the supply chain side of things, and essentially apprenticed under the head of supply chain for Beatrice Cheese, and at that time it was not just the procurement end of things and the commodities end of things, but customer service and transportation and warehousing and supply demand planning. So the learning curve was quite steep during that time, and this goes back about toward the end of that, about a little over 20 years ago now. I think that's where I really took my first steps in terms of doing for myself to having to look out and do for others. All of a sudden I was co-managing a group of 35 to 40 people, so it was a big change, a big learning curve for me. Conagra kept evolving. We shut that operation down and merged things into our refrigerated food businesses in Chicago, and I was there for another few years in similar roles, and decided it was time to move on. They wanted me back in Omaha. I didn't want to go back to Omaha, so we stuck around in Chicago and went to work for Sara Lee, headed up commodity ingredient procurement for North America for the company. From there moved on to a company called Ingredion. It was called Corn Products International at the time, but Ingredion, they're a big supplier of ours, so kind of back to the front end of things again. My father was in the corn processing business, so it was a pretty familiar place to me to be a part of Ingredion, very well run company. From there I had a chance, I really enjoyed being at Ingredion, but from there I had a chance to do a really interesting job. Kraft was splitting up into two pieces. Its regular center of store stuff, and then its snack food business, international snack food business, which became Mondelez, and Mondelez needed a head of global commodities, and that role had my name all over it, and that was my first chance to manage and lead a team internationally. So I was based in Chicago. Most of my team was in Switzerland. We had folks in South America. We had folks in Singapore. That was, the time of my life where I got to travel the world a little bit, and understand how things were done in other places. And again, it continues just to build upon your experiences. Working with team, learning to work remotely. I think that time in that business helped me understand how to work well during the time where we all split up in March of 2020, trying to get things done where we're all in different places. But there was always a little something burning inside of me. I had always worked in the same end of the businesses, and I had always wanted to lead a business. There were times I had some chances to, and it wasn't quite right, and something came along in late 2016 that piqued my interest. It found me. I wasn't actively looking for it. I was actually really happy with what I was doing at Mondelez. It was a lot of fun. But something piqued my interest. A real reputable recruiting company came to me and said, there's this little company in Ohio. They do a lot of work internationally with coffee and cocoa and spices and seasonings, and have a couple big customers, and they really want to grow, and we need a succession plan for our CEO, and would you be interested? And I'm like, that sounds pretty awesome. My kids were at an age where they were getting ready to leave the nest, so it really was a good time to try something different like this. And I'm usually a very good judge of situations and character, and this thing blew up in my face more than you talk about major disappointment. What was advertised, what we talked about, what the interactions were to look like, how the work with the board looked, was completely different from what I signed up for to when I got there. And I didn't last but 6 months. And like I said, I usually pride myself on these things, being able to assess a situation well. And we're going to hit on some of that a little bit later, because I actually applied an equation to it, and I was still wrong. And that was a disappointing part about it. So I went back to Chicago, and I kicked around and did some different things for about a year and a half. I got involved with executive coaching, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was something I kind of needed. therapeutically, I think, for myself to kind of lick the wounds of what happened in Ohio. But you know, I would have loved to have made a living doing that, but it wasn't the right time for it. I bought a learning center franchise with a friend of mine, and we it's an okay business, but it's you know, spinning wheels. It really doesn't make a lot of money. It's hard to make a living doing stuff like that. It's really more of a hobby. But you know, I wanted to get back. I kind of had to reground myself. It was just a time of life where I had to think, okay, what's important to you? What do you really want to do? You know, what type of people do you want to work with? What type of company do you want to work for? And, you know, luckily, I ended up here. And, you know, I can say, you know, with, you know, this is a very unique place. We have a unique business model. You know, I think, you know, all of you in the room here are Holdings employees, and you know, we all have different roles and how we approach that and how we approach our constituents. But you know, the leadership here, you know, the approach we take, I think the way we go about and handle our business was a very good fit for me. Couldn't be happier to be here. It'll be 3 years, and be 3 years here in April, I believe. I think the first person I met when I walked in the door my first day was Renee. She was handing me keys and pamphlets and telling me how to sign up for stuff, and just going on and on and on. I remember it well. Anybody seen the movie Roadhouse? Nobody wants to admit they've seen the movie Roadhouse? Steve, yeah, okay. I was gonna guess you probably did. Clay, I know Clay has. Yeah. Yeah, possibly the best movie ever made. Didn't win any awards for it, but it should have. So yep, that's Patrick Swayze, God rest his soul. You know, if you're looking for leadership cliff notes, this is it right here. This is I highly encourage you to watch this 90-minute cinematic gem of a movie. So Patrick Swayze's character Dalton is he's kind of a drifter. He's a guy who goes from town to town to clean up bars where, as they say, the types of places where they sweep the eyeballs up off the floor at the end of the night. They're you know, so violent and nasty, and you know, his job is to clean these places up. And as he gathers his bouncers and the other bar employees for the first meeting, he says, I got 3 rules for running the place. These are the only 3 things you need to know for us to be successful. You know, the first is, you know, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. You know, so how do you apply that to the world we live in right now, especially? You know, we've had nothing but the unexpected here over the last 18 months. And in business in general, you've got the unexpected all the time, you know, last 18 months aside. So never underestimate the complexity of things, especially working in a company like we're in here, in a holdings company where you've got different constituents and different businesses. They're all very different from one another, you know, in terms of how they operate, different operating platforms, different sets of customers, different ways of going about their business. So, you know, the complexity is something to never underestimate. The second was take it outside. Don't start anything inside the bar. And that's really speaking to how we handle conflict, how we handle people in general. You know, you hear the term praise in public, and you know, get tough in private, one-to-one. Always a good thing to follow. You know, that's a good parallel for, you know, taking your fight outside the bar, if you will. And then the last thing is, not yet, is to be nice until it's time to stop being nice. And there is a time to stop being nice, but you can get pretty far by being nice. You know, my mom always said, you know, say please and thank you, keep your nose clean, work hard, and good things will happen to you. And those are pretty good principles to live by, I think. You know, but as a manager and as a leader, there's times where you do have to make tough calls, you have to make tough decisions, but if you overuse that, if you overuse that skill set or that approach, it can wear thin too. You know, the people that are people that are always angry and always mad, and you lose your credibility pretty quick. So it's easier to be a nice person and let it fly every so often and more effectively versus carrying a chip on your shoulder and arguing balls and strikes every 10 minutes with the umpire. So all that pop culture fun stuff aside, all the cliff notes aside, in all seriousness, the elements that have really, I think, helped me develop my why, to get to where I am in terms of leadership, in terms of how I approach the job, how I approach peers, how I approach those above me. But really these areas, I think if I looked at the things throughout my career that have created me and created my why, it's these 5 things are the ones that stand out the most. And the first one's around an identity. And all these really are about creating an identity, but each of us has a skill each of us has something that we're good at, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. When I played tennis in high school, I was a decent tennis player, but I had a really good backhand. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I played the sport right-handed, but I batted left-handed when I played baseball, and maybe it was just a natural swing for me. But it was a really good backhand, and I remember during warm-ups I would do everything I could to run around that backhand so my opponent didn't see it. And then when the match came, halfway through the first set, he's trying to figure out where this backhand came from that he didn't see in warm-ups. It's having that go-to skill, that go-to move that you can lean on, something that they'd say, hey, I want to work with Nick because he's really good at this. Having that one thing that you do well become known to others becomes a building block in the creation of your why. The dirty jobs, not the TV show, but being willing to take on the dirty work, the jobs that nobody else wants to do. There's some good reasons for it. When I was a commodities trader starting out, I had asked to trade a P&L that nobody else wanted to do. I think it helped me forge an identity because nobody else wanted to do it, so it became all mine. And over the 7 or 8 years that I grew that P&L, grew that business, I became known in the industry for it. So it was a way to build an identity, build a name in the business world, if you will. Secondly, when you take the dirty jobs, let's face it, you can be below the radar. Sometimes the expectations aren't that great. You can make small incremental improvements on a continuum that are appreciated by the business, that are incremental, that are new and not repetitive, and those sort of things can lead to bigger things down the road. So being able to do those things that nobody else wants to do, the degree of difficulty shouldn't be underestimated. Customer service, we talk a lot about this in the procurement space. As post holdings employees, let's face it, in reality we're overhead in a lot of ways. We're here to serve the businesses. If these businesses that our company has don't exist, we don't exist here. It doesn't work the other way around, and can't stress that enough. Understanding what your constituents do, understanding their business, putting yourself in their shoes, feeling their pain. This is where empathy comes in terms of your building blocks. Sitting in their shoes. The terms we and they are very important here. You hear a lot of, they do this at that company and they do this here. It sure works better to put yourself in their shoes, in their boat, to gain their trust if you use the term we. And that's something I can't emphasize enough, and I didn't go as far as Jeff did the other day in his presentation by spelling it out up here. But I will say I had this one done before I saw his. So, you know, had I known that he was able to get away with it, I probably just would have spelled it out. But you know, kept it real, right, Renee?
You did.
Kept it professional.
All the way.
Even though 2 little asterisks between an S and a T is, you know, I don't know how professional that is, but I think you get it, right?
We get it.
You know. Relationships are paramount to all of this. You know, I talked a little bit about my, you know, relationships with those close to me, but it's important over the course of your career, you know, to build them, to grow them, to nurture them, and to keep them. This coming Friday morning, I'm meeting with my very first boss that I had in Memphis when I was trading cottonseed down there. He's battling cancer right now, and you know, he's went from, you know, being a boss to being a good friend over the years. And you know, it's just one example. You know, we all have those people in our life, but you know, I tend to value it because I think you know, the fabric that pulls these things together over the years, you know, tend to also create your identity, create your why. You know, we're not all you know, you don't, a lot of what I talked about, but you know, the first 3 bullets are about what you do on your own. You know, these last couple here are really, you know, what do you do with the help of others? You know, how do the relationships that you make form, you know, what you become? And you know, I can't stress enough the importance that if I don't have those relationships that I've been able to nurture over the years, I don't have, honestly, much of anything. I mean, that's I'm not who I am if I don't have that. And then this last one here was an add-on. Someone near and dear to me helped me with this one and helped me see it. And you know, it's around mentorship. You know, like I said, we can't do it all ourselves. And understanding what a mentor is and what that person means to you, and you know, what you're able to lean on them for is really important. We all need them. They don't have to come from inside the company. You know, they don't even have to come from inside the industry we're in. It's good to have people to seek counsel from and get guidance from who have been there and done that. And then understanding the difference really between mentorship and sponsorship. You know, mentorship, you know, they can help guide you, but they don't have skin in the game. Sponsorship does. That's somebody that's going to stand behind you and say, you know what, I believe in you. I'm willing to stand behind you as you go through, you know, whatever it is you're going through here. Add it all up, it comes into the most, I think, important foundation in leadership, and that is trust. So let's talk about trust for a little bit. Back to Simon Sinek, another good soundbite from Simon. You know, it says a team, you know, is not a group of people that work together. It's a group of people that trust each other, and that is so true. You know, you're not a team unless you trust one another. You know, you're not a team unless you know, if you're a basketball team, everybody needs to know where they need to be on the floor. You know, if you're running an offense in football and the quarterback has that ball up in the air, he's got to trust that his receiver is going to turn around at the right time and haul it in. There's a lot that goes on around trust, on and on and on. Has anybody heard of the trust equation? Wow. Not even HR. Michael has, of course. I'm glad you let me keep this in the presentation and you didn't edit it. No. If you're ever wondering if you can trust someone, or if you're ever wondering if you can be trusted, this is a really neat little test. And I highly encourage you to do it. Now, full disclaimer here. I ran this ahead of my opportunity in Ohio, and I still screwed it up. I'll tell you why here in a second. But you can put some math around measuring trust. So what is it? So what's the numerator? For those of you who remember numerators and denominators, or at least can identify them. Credibility. So that means You know, do you know your stuff? Do you know what you're talking about? Do you know, can people look at you and say, yep, Brianna knows what she's talking about, she's an expert in packaging, you know, I trust that she knows her material. There's reliability. Do you do what you say you're gonna do? Do you return emails? Do you return phone calls? Do you hit deadlines? You know, are you a dependable person in general? And then there's intimacy. This one's a little harder to define, but it's really about, are you an open person? Are you willing to disclose and share a little more? And are you able to get others to share personal information, opinions, that sort of thing, openly? You know, it goes to not only your level of it, but your ability to influence others in that regard. That all makes up the numerator. Now, when I was at Mondelez, this is where I learned. This is where I got introduced to this. You know, where you're having one of these big, you know, HR-sponsored leadership mind meld sessions that were all fun, and you know, we get our little pods like you guys are here, and we start talking about ourselves in this regard. And you know, everybody is really focused on that numerator. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm credible, I know my stuff, and you know, I could be better about returning calls, but you know, I'll work on that. You know, I could be a little more open, but I think I'm an open, fun guy, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's all great, but what people always miss in this whole thing is the bottom, is the denominator. You know, self-orientation, or I've seen it listed as self-interest before, too. And what that means is, what's our degree of, you know, team player orientation? We all have a level of self-interest. Every single one of us. If you say you don't, you're a big fat liar, right? We all have some degree of self-interest. You know, we wouldn't be human if we didn't. The degree of the self-interest, I think, is really what drives this whole equation. Because those things at the top, you know, you can really work. You know, they're pretty tangible. You can work on those. Things on the bottom are a little bit, speak to your personality a little bit, what you're born with, you know, and it's learning to become selfless and become that more and more of a team player, even though inherently we all have a level of self-interest. What I missed when I looked at that opportunity in Ohio, I was really focused on that numerator. Like, these guys know what they're talking about. They're, you know, they respond well, they communicate well, you know, they share, but you know, there was a lot of dissension in the board that I didn't pick up on, and each of these board members, who are also owners, had their own self-interest in terms of where they wanted to take the company, and a lot of them wanted to sell it before they hired a new CEO, and that's what happened. So you have to take it as it is and really focus on what's important in there, and that's that bottom piece. So I'll wrap it with this. You know, as many of you know, we reset the procurement team. We started the work last April. You know, moving from a group that was primarily involved with just post-consumer brands, and you know, I had spent a lot of time in the months before, about a year ago now, actually, working with, you know, the presidents of Michael Foods and Bob Evans on bringing their teams aboard and creating one big team that would serve our three wholly owned North American businesses. And as we pulled our team together in April, you know, felt it was a good time to you know, establish our own norms with one another. You know, as a leadership team, you know, myself and the 6 folks that are a part of that team, you know, how are we going to interact with each other? How are we going to hold one another to account? What was our behavior going to look like with one another? And this is what we came to in terms of you know, figuring out what our collective why looked like. One was living the values. You know, it's interesting because each of these Post Holdings has its values. Each of the operating companies have their values. they're all written differently, but they're all kind of the same at the end of the day. You look at one company's value statement versus another, and they're all kind of the same, aren't they, Renee? Yeah, yeah. You know, they'll use different acronyms and stuff, but you know. But that said, you can't go wrong by living the values, right? That's you know, part of the fabric of a company. You know, we're going to deliver on our commitments. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're not going to finger point. This is really, the time we're in now with the challenges we have in supply chain and other parts of the business is a great time for finger pointing, but it really tests our resolve, but we're not going to do it. We're going to solve problems because the business needs us to keep moving and we need to keep solving problems. You know, we're going to lead with boldness and respect. You know, if you want to get something done, you got to be tough, you got to be resolute, but you have to respect people at the same time. Respect one another. And then, you know, what we talk about the next couple really speak to, you know, being the team players, you know, the enterprise approach, you know, the company over the department, over the individual, you know, at all times. And, you know, we have this cute little acronym around raising the bar. You know, that really just stands for continuous improvement. You know, it's about getting better all the time. It's about incremental progress over time where you can show your work, show your results, and simply improve. So those are the words we try to live by on our team. Hopefully they resonate with you. I think that's all I have. It is, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Or listen to any of your comments. Nick, you're dying to say something.
No.
You got this.
I didn't know all that much, so.
You got this look on your face, like.
No, that's it.
You just know about my shoe game because you influenced that.
Now I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I came in here a few years ago. I'm like, I got to have shoes like that guy because that guy is cool. Anything at all? No.
Didn't realize all those different things you worked on and just the way you thought about each move so much, right? It's all, you see your end game, you see these steps to get there.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And, you know, if you weren't able to hear what Jamie said, it was, you know, all the steps, and you think about your end game, and you know, it's funny because I can't say my end game. I thought about, you know, 30 years ago, thought about my end game here, but you know, you think about it in terms of how can I get better each day? How can I do things that are, you know, accretive and add value to, you know, where I am, and you know, how do I not, you know, in my case, I guess, how do I not settle? How do I continue to push myself out of my comfort zone? And you probably saw a lot of that out of the comfort zone in there. And you know, it's you know, leaving comfort zones can mean moving. It can mean new companies, new experiences in new companies. It can mean a lot of different things.
What advice would you give to somebody working outside of your department, where you say that utilizing this model, we seem to get the most traction or the most success in working with the divisions? Because we all at Post Holdings here have the same struggles with this model, trying to influence our organization. So I would appreciate your perspective.
I'd say, Steve, it's right in here. You know, it's around. I think the reason our group was able to break through in the model was it's a couple reasons really. One, you know, I think the two businesses that we brought on were underserved in the space, and it was pretty clear. So it gave us a reason to create a value proposition for them. And I think it's important to create that value proposition. You know, I had a boss at ConAgra a long time ago brilliant guy, he came across with a pretty laid back vibe, but he always had the right things to say at the right time, and he said, let him have it our way, because we worked in a similar area there where we were a corporate function helping the businesses. Let him have it our way. I'm like, okay, what the hell does that mean? It means, it can be their, make it feel like it's their idea, put yourself in their shoes, let them, take the credit for it or whatever, but know it was you that made it happen. And that's where a lot of things around customer service and empathy and sitting in their shoes and understanding them, I think that goes a long way. But first you have to have that whole reason for being, that whole reason of, more than the I'm from corporate and here to help. It's more of a, hey, I can take you from here to here. I can show you the value in what you're doing. Here's how much time it's going to take, off of your hands, or how much time it's going to take from you, period. And here's what you'll get out of the whole thing. And I think being able to create that value proposition along the guise of customer service, standing in their shoes, empathy, speaking the right way, using the we instead of they, you'd be shocked at how much of a difference that makes, And then building the relationships above and beyond that, getting out to see them, goes a long way. I think these are the two things that helped us gain the trust. We really tried to minimize the whole self-orientation side, and we weren't making it about procurement, we were making it about them, about the business, because that's why we're here. Without the business, no use. Did that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
Are there, I'm trying to find the best way to ask this, but are there specific things you could pinpoint along the way as you point to your growth as a leader, versus just experience over time that's kind of helped build on growth there?
Yeah, there are, and most of them, Clay, are events and points in time that really didn't have a lot to do with something going on in a business sense. They tend to be moments that people come to you unexpectedly. I remember one. It goes back about 13 years ago now, and one of my direct reports came in to my office, and he was just absolutely visibly shaken. He comes walking in, and he said, he goes, Dave, I gotta go home. I gotta leave. He goes, my son just committed suicide. And you talk about some, you're prepared for a lot of stuff as a leader, but you're not really prepared for that, right? And the fact that he sat down at the table at my office, and I sat down across from him for a couple minutes, and just sat with him. The fact that he was able to do that, to come in to me and not just blurt out the headline, but also it was a cry for help, clearly. I think without some of those building blocks, I'm not able to be there for him in a situation like that. And I think those are the things that help you grow. It's the experiences that come along with it, rather than, it was the flood of 1993 and we were throwing sandbags around, down at the Mississippi River to, make sure the flour mill didn't flood. Those are great memories, but those aren't the things that grip you, that you remember. And I think you'll experience those along the way. And if you focus on, if you focus really on these things in here, again, you put yourself in a position to be of use to people, because that's where, I think that's where the real growth really occurs. And God forbid anybody has a situation like that come up, but it does, and you have to kind of know how to handle it when it does.
I have a question, but just taking some points out of your presentation, which was absolutely great, by the way.
Oh,
You did
thanks.
a good job, Dave. Being a leader, I think about, just the word leading means being out front, but really that's like the opposite of what a leader really is. And being part of that is, like you said, knowing your purpose. And it takes you a minute to really understand what your purpose is. And once you know your purpose, I think that serves a healthy part of being a really good, effective leader. So I was chiming in on your points on that. I think that's a really good point about being a good leader, is knowing your why, knowing
Yep.
your purpose, because that's almost who you are and what you do best. So to really know what that is and how you can really use that to be a part of what you do, I think is great. So I'm just taking that away from out of what you said and just throwing it out there.
Thank you.
It's a point.
Glad it was useful. Anything else? I'll make sure I keep you on schedule here. You're good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be in here with you this morning. Have a good couple 3 days, and I'll be around in my office in the afternoons if any of you want to stop by and follow up on any of this. So it's good to see you all.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you, yeah.